It was an ordinary summer morning in Chesapeake, Virginia in 2022, when a homeowner walked out back and saw something long and dark lying dead still in the swimming pool. For a second, it did not register. Too big to be a fallen branch, too solid to be a shadow on the bottom, and not moving at all. Then it moved. An armored body shifted in the shallow end, a ridged tail swung slow through the water, and a broad reptilian head lifted just far enough to break the surface and sit there, watching. There was an alligator in the backyard pool. Virginia is not alligator country. There is no wild breeding population of alligators in the state, and there is not supposed to be one anywhere near it. So the animal in that pool was either someone's illegal pet that got too big and got dumped, or it was something stranger, a wild animal that had wandered up from the south into a state the map says has no alligators at all. And the honest truth is that nobody could say for certain which one it was, because both are now possible. That uncertainty is the whole story, because the animal most Americans picture as a Florida swamp monster, a thing that lives behind a fence at some theme park near Orlando, has never actually stayed where people think it does. And the line that marks the northern edge of where it lives has been moving. This is not a story about a monster that appeared out of nowhere. It is a story about an animal that was always closer than you thought, that we nearly wiped off the map, that came all the way back, and that is now quietly testing the edges of a range most people have completely wrong. Start with the thing almost everyone gets backwards. The American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, is not a Florida animal. Florida has the most famous ones, around 1 1/3 million of them, in nearly every body of fresh water in the state. But the alligator's range runs across the entire southeastern United States, and Louisiana actually holds more of them than Florida does. Texas has somewhere between 400,000 and 500,000, spread across nearly half its counties. And the range does not stop at the deep south. It runs up through Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, through Arkansas and into Oklahoma, and all the way up the Atlantic coast into North Carolina, where the northern edge of the wild population has sat for as long as anyone has kept track. The alligator was never just a swamp thing in Florida. It has always been a creature of the whole warm-bottom third of the country, and most people have simply never been told. And it is not a small animal. A big male runs 11 to 15 feet and can top 1,000 pounds. It is a true apex predator, and once it reaches full size, more or less anything that comes to the water to drink is on the menu. Fish, birds, deer, other alligators, and it will happily take a full-grown feral hog. This is not an animal you want turning up somewhere it is not expected, and it is turning up in exactly those places. The reason it stops where it stops is temperature, and this is where the animal is far tougher than its reputation. An alligator runs on outside heat. It needs the air above about 40 degrees to move around at all and above about 70 to digest a meal. That sounds like a hard southern limit, and for breeding it mostly is. But surviving is a different question. Alligators are more cold-hardy than any other crocodilian on Earth, and they have a trick for it that has to be seen to be believed. When a pond starts to freeze over them, they do not flee and they do not drown. They rise until their snouts just break the surface, and they let the ice close in around them, freezing solid across the whole pond with the tip of the gator's nose sticking up through it like a snorkel. They lock there, barely breathing, heart slowed to a crawl, for as long as the freeze lasts, days if it has to be. People in North Carolina swamp parks have filmed whole rows of them iced in exactly like that, alive, waiting, nostrils poking through the sheet of ice. They dig dens into the banks and drop their metabolism to almost nothing. An alligator can live through winters that would kill a crocodile outright, which means an alligator can survive a good deal farther north than it can breed. Hold on to that gap between surviving and breeding, because it is the key to the entire question. Here is what has actually been happening at that northern edge. Back in 2014, a federal wildlife biologist noted that the nearest wild alligators used to sit about 60 miles south of the Virginia border. By then, they were within 15 to 20 miles of it. The line had closed most of that distance in a single generation. In North Carolina, the population grew enough that the state authorized its first regulated alligator hunt in 2018, something you do not do for an animal that is barely hanging on. And in Tennessee, a state with no historical alligator population to speak of, Alligators have moved in on their own through the inland river systems and established a small breeding foothold in the southwestern corner of the state. Not released pets. Animals that swam their way into new country and started to settle. The map that says the alligator ends in North Carolina is already out of date, and the people who draw those maps know it. So why is the edge moving now? Two forces pushing at the same time. The first is warming winters. The one thing that has always held the alligator back is the cold snap that kills eggs and hatchlings, and across the northern edge of its range, those winters have been getting milder over recent decades. Every degree the coldest nights climb pushes the line where an alligator can not just survive, but reproduce a little farther north. The second force has nothing to do with climate at all. It is recovery pressure. In the middle of the 20th century, the American alligator was hunted so hard for its hide that it nearly vanished, wiped out across huge stretches of its range, and driven to the very edge of extinction. Then it was protected, and it came back so completely that it became one of the greatest wildlife recoveries in American history, taken off the endangered list entirely. And a recovered predator population does the one thing recovered populations always do. It fills up its home range and starts shoving its young outward. Every crowded swamp pushes out young alligators looking for water nobody else has claimed, and some of them push north. Warming opens the door. Population pressure walks the animals through it. The evidence that this is real and not just a scattering of lost individuals is the breeding. A single wandering alligator hundreds of miles from home is a curiosity. Alligators building nests, laying eggs, and hatching young in new territory is a range expansion, a different thing entirely. And nesting has now been documented at the northern coastal edge in North Carolina and into that southwestern Tennessee foothold. When females start laying, the animals are not passing through. They have moved in. This is how a range expands in real life, not with a sudden invasion, but with a single female digging a nest a few miles farther north than any female did the year before, and then her daughters doing the same, and their daughters after them. The line creeping upward one nest at a time until a state that never had alligators has them for good, and nobody can point to the day it happened, because there was no day. There was only a slow accumulation of nests that no one was counting. Which brings us back to the pool in Virginia, and to the objection any honest person raises here. If alligators are marching north, where is the wave? Why is it one gator in a pool and not 100 of them in the James River? And the answer is that this is not a wave, and anyone selling it to you as one is lying. This is the honest shape of it, and it matters. The northern march is slow. It moves at the speed of milder winters and dispersing juveniles, which is a matter of decades, not seasons. It is a line creeping, not a flood pouring. And a lot of the most dramatic far north sightings, the alligator that turns up in a pond in Ohio or a lake in New Jersey, are not range expansion at all. They are released pets, animals someone bought small and dumped when they got too big, and they die the first hard winter. Those are not the story. The story is the quiet, unglamorous, genuinely wild edge, grinding north through the Carolinas and into Tennessee, where the animals are surviving on their own and beginning to breed. Survival is running ahead of breeding, exactly the way the biology said it would. An alligator can already live a good deal farther north than it can successfully hatch a nest, so the survival line is out ahead, scouting, while the breeding line follows slowly behind it. And the attacks, the thing everyone's mind jumps to, are genuinely rare. Alligators mostly want nothing to do with people, and the odds of being killed by one are tiny even in Florida, where there are millions of them and millions of people living right on top of each other. So the danger in this story is not a coming wave of man-eaters. It is subtler than that, and in a way more real. It is that people in states that have never had alligators, that have no alligator habits, no warning signs, no instinct to think twice before letting a dog swim in a warm pond in August, are slowly moving into range of an animal they have never once had to consider. A Florida child learns not to walk to the water's edge at dusk. A child in a brand new subdivision in Tennessee does not, because for their whole family's history, there was never anything in that pond that could eat them. The risk is not that the alligator is a monster, it is that it is arriving somewhere nobody is watching for it. So the science does not claim the alligator is about to conquer the north. It claims something narrower, and if you sit with it, stranger, that an animal from a lineage 200 million years old, a survivor from the age of the dinosaurs, an animal we personally almost shot out of existence within living memory, has recovered so completely and holds up in the cold so well that the northern boundary of its entire world, a boundary that held steady for as long as anyone was measuring it, has started to move. Not overnight, not in a flood. One dispersing juvenile and one mild winter at a time, up the rivers, into states that are writing their first alligator management plans right now this year, because for the first time in their history, they actually need one. That is not a headline about an invasion. It is something slower and heavier than that. It is the map of a country quietly being redrawn underneath everyone by an animal that was here long before the map existed. So it ends where it began, at a pool in Virginia with an animal in it that was not supposed to be there. Maybe that one was a dumped pet. Plenty of them are, and it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. But the reason nobody could say for sure anymore, the reason a wild alligator in Virginia is no longer the impossible thing it was a generation ago, is that the swamp monster everyone pictures safely fenced off in Florida was never only in Florida, and the line that kept it in the south is not holding the way it used to. It is out there right now, in the warm, dark water at the bottom of the country, slowly, patiently, testing how far north it can go, and finding, winter after winter, that the answer is a little farther than it was the year before.